In the last 3 episodes, we've explored the concept of a cognitive elite that have risen to power as a new class of sovereign individuals, redesigning governments to suit their ends. We've also looked at how the elites think of life as a game and how they collect our data in order to analyse and manipulate us. In this episode, we are going to look at how they would organise a simulation in order to make predictions about the power structure of the world. I believe the perfect analogy already exists with a game called Crusader Kings, which simulates our historical feudal society where you play as a house, and when your current character dies, you continue playing as their heir, and the game ends when you have no more heirs. The game is set 1,000 years ago, but as we take a look at it, imagine what the modern version of this game would look like if it were to incorporate the idea of corporations and data collection. It would be an incredibly powerful simulation, and one that would be able to predict behaviours and model political and social strategy. Fascists, beware of the Techno-Feudalists.
I'm a neo-reactionary absolutist. I believe in a absolute world order, organized in a particular way.
When you're looking at a government is a corporation that owns a country. It just is. It's the same thing.
I'm Peter Thiel. I support people who are building new things. I'm not a politician, but neither is Donald Trump. And it's time to rebuild America.
Anything we can do to help this go along, and we're going to be there for you. And you'll call my people, you'll call me. It doesn't make any difference. We have no formal chain of command.
I've created a character for the game. He's called Donald Drumpf. Plastic surgery did not exist 1,000 years ago, so he looked his actual age, wrinkles and all. In this game we don't play as a single character, we play as a house, so we'll be playing as House Drumpf. As soon as Donald dies, we will play as his heir, which is his oldest son, Stephen Drumpf. I wasn't able to name his children, unfortunately, but it looks as though we do have a Murdoch Drumpf randomly come in. This is our land here, the atoll. This is what we own. Our liege is the King of Scotland, so we answer to him. Basically, this game is perfect at structuring the hierarchy of feudal society. So as I answer to the king, and he hates me at the moment, he has a very negative view of me, also his children, probably because of the characteristics I gave him. But this is the most interesting page. So this is my council. This is what I look for when I'm looking for NRX behavior, for instance. If there is someone who is a public figure that the NRX want to infiltrate, they will surround that person as an assistant or as a spy master or any sort of role that they can do that would assist that person that is doing good work at causing chaos in society. And they will assist that person and try and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and making sure that when they get negative attention from their actions, they're there to kind of pat them on the back and be like, hey, it's okay, you're doing great, keep going. If, for instance, this was Piers Corbyn, he'd probably have his assistant as that bald-headed, face-tattooed guy who's holding his megaphone all the time and following him about. Or alternatively, Boris Johnson, for instance, his assistant would be Dominic Cummings, and he'd have all sorts of flying monkeys in his cabinet, which would, like, Stewart would be the Chancellor, for instance. So if we take a look at our Donald Trump character, these 5 stats here are his base stats. So we've got diplomacy, which is a 0 at, martial, his military ability, his stewardship, so how good he is with money, his intrigue, so his plotting and like spying and that kind of thing, and then learning how quickly his stats can improve. He also has personality traits which affect his base stats, so I've created this to try and replicate what Donald Trump's character is like. So he's lustful, which gives him more intrigue. He's gluttonous, which obviously he spends a lot of money on that, so it lowers his stewardship. Greedy, lazy, wrathful, impatient, arrogant, deceitful, craven, arbitrary. So it's very rare you get someone in the game that has this many negative characters, which is why he's even hated by his wife. You can see that she's not very fond of all his sinful behaviors. So this is our military strength here, and that's how many people we can raise if we need to go to war against like another lord, for instance. If we were to see this in the future, they would be kind of comparable to a cult following, for instance. So Tommy Robinson, for instance, all the people who turn up to his protests would come under like his kind of military strength, his EDL following of old, etc. And then we can also hire mercenaries. If we need more troops than we actually have, we can just hire a private entity to come and be our army for us. In the modern era, you get kind of military mercenaries who go out, like private contractors who go out to Iraq and help the American army and that kind of thing. It's in the NRX interest to collect the data on each individual who has any sort of power or influence in society. So then when the NRX are looking at Tommy Robinson's sides and Patriotic Alternative sides, for instance, and they're engineering a conflict between them two, that's the equivalent of having the King of Scotland have Murray, for instance, so the person who owns this, Duke Mael Shnattai, however you say his name, it's the equivalent of the NRX going to him and saying, hey, this guy over here is a knobhead, and they just kind of create some conflict between the two so they can fight amongst each other, and the NRX, the King of Scotland, benefits because they're just the distraction, the bread and circus for the rest of the lords to support in whatever way. So if they're able to collect the data on each specific person in society, fill that into their computer model, or the equivalent to this game but set 1,000 years in the future, then they're able to kind of look and see, oh, this person's got 900 military strength, we've got 500 military strength. If they start a war between those two, this character Murray is going to win, or most likely to win, and would that benefit the NRX and their overall grand plan? And if it does, they can use their council that they've infiltrated, or that they hope to infiltrate, as a way of manipulating that figurehead into doing what they're supposed to be doing.
All different moments of banter.
So when I'm watching these figures on their live streams, I see people who get into some conflict, and then, let's say at Speaker's Corner, for instance, and then all of a sudden the NRX council members will go and surround that person who's under conflict, whether it be like being accused of something or being challenged on their view or whatever, and they either assist, deflect, they're just there to make sure that their man is okay.
Don't get triggered, G. Don't get triggered. If you don't lie, don't lie. Why are you lying? Yeah, we have winners. I don't know this guy. We have winners. Oh, liar! Liar! Oh, c'est Black Forex, You're very ill behaved today. You need to have a snack bar.
And they can do this whether the powerful person is aware of this or not. For instance, I've had people come and assist me in a way that they're just collecting information, they're feeding me information to try and push me in a certain direction, which would then distract me from where I was heading to, and where more new information would have come from my original kind of direction. We've gone from 1,000 years ago, where you needed to be landed basically to have some power, or you needed to be on the council of someone who's landed to have some sort of influence. Think about Game of Thrones. You had all those characters in the background who are trying to manipulate the powerful kings and the queens in certain directions. And this is exactly the same as these characters. When you don't have to be landed, the power comes from other forms. So, for instance, you'll have journalists with their power, me with my very minor influence on Twitter, for instance. You get Boris Johnson and his power being seduced by people like Dominic Cummings.
Within days of the election, you were discussing getting rid of him.
Yes. Well, for all the reasons we've been discussing. He doesn't have a plan, he doesn't know how to be Prime Minister, and we'd only got him in there because we had to solve a certain problem, not because we thought that he was the right person to run in the country.
Well, what kind of con had you just pulled off on the British public then, if that's really what you think?
Well, it's not, I don't think it's a con, we're trying to solve very hard problems in the order that we can solve them in.
There's nothing wrong with running an election campaign, presenting one thing to the public, saying, he's the guy for the job, and then days after the result comes through, you then, unelected officials inside government, discussing getting rid of him. That's okay?
Well, I'd say that's politics.
You'll get Donald Trump being seduced by people like Steve Bannon, and then once they've been seduced by the main guy, they're able to kind of analyze on the spot what types of people they will fall for. So all the infiltration of certain figures or groups are very much bespoke to that group. They won't infiltrate with someone who's not suited for that role. So not only would their simulation calculate the size of their military strength or influence, it also calculates the relationships between each character and tries to figure out who would work well together, who are enemies, and how they can use that knowledge of each relationship to their own benefit, which is where you get an idea of unite the right from. So in this game, we can influence other people by getting certain hooks into people. Random events will pop up every now and again where we get the chance to find out a secret about someone. We might catch someone cheating on someone or something. And then once you find out that information, you can hold that information against the person that you have found that information out about. And you can use that information to make them do what you want them to do in future. So we see that in real life. David Cameron and the pig's head incident. And then that goes back to the JFK speech where he's literally talking about no secret will be revealed until it's revealed for a purpose. Obviously, secrets aren't secrets anymore once they've been revealed. So my last 3 videos, I've used the meeting between Donald Trump and the top 10, 20 billionaires in America, organized by Peter Thiel, as a kind of like council meeting.
Well, I just want to thank everybody. This is a truly amazing group of people. I won't tell you the hundreds of calls we've had asking to come to this meeting. And I will say Peter was sort of saying, no, that company's too small. And these are monster companies. But I want to start by thanking Peter because he saw something very early, maybe before we saw it. And of course, he's known for that in a different way. But he's been so terrific and so outstanding. And he got just about the biggest applause at the Republican National Convention. He's ahead of the curve. And I want to thank him, and he's a very special guy. So I want to add that I'm here to help you folks do well. And you're doing well right now, and I'm very honored by the bounce. They're all talking about the bounce, so right now everybody in the Zoom has to like me at least a little bit, but we're going to try and have that bounce continue. And perhaps even more importantly, we want you to keep going with the incredible innovation. There's nobody like you in the world. There's nobody like the people in this room. And anything we can do to help this go along, and we're going to be there for you. And you'll call my people, you'll call me. It doesn't make any difference. We have no formal chain of command around here. I'm honored to have Gary, the president of Goldman Sachs, left Goldman Sachs to do this, and Wilbur, Everybody knows Wilbur. They never call him Wilbur Ross on Wall Street. They just say, oh, it's Wilbur. There's nobody like him. And we're going to do fair trade deals. We're going to make it a lot easier for you to trade across borders, because a lot of restrictions, a lot of problems. But I think you'll see. And if you have any ideas on that, that would be great.
What you can also do in this game is make decisions. You can host a feast. That meeting between the billionaires and Trump was the equivalent of this holding of a feast. So what that means is you can increase the opinions of your vassals who turn up. That was basically what that meeting was all about. It was getting Trump to be on the side of the billionaires. It was let Trump take the piss out of us at this meeting, just so then he can get the good photo ops, and then they get what they want in return, which is a passive Trump to their ideology. They act passive towards him and stroke his ego and be his friend.
And I want to thank you, man. You have a very special guy. So,
and then he is passive to them when they want to manipulate him to their own ends. And so these feasts are simulated in this game in the equivalent of those types of meetings. So again, if we imagine this game progressing 1,000 years, you can only go up to like 1400s in the actual game, but imagine an update, a modern version of this game where not only are we simulating landed power, but it could go further and simulate the shareholding power of corporations. And this is why they're called Techno-Feudalists, because they have this same hierarchical structure that they are set up as, like in the feudal way that we're simulating here. However, they're not landed. Their power comes from the data that they own. So the Techno-Feudalists are a special breed because not only are their shares held in this technological way, you can't hold it in your hand, they're corporations. They don't necessarily make money on the products that they create, sell, produce, and deliver. Their money is mostly built on the data that they're able to suck up from their companies. So think about Mark Zuckerberg and our social data. We've got Elon Musk and our driving data. We've got Jeff Bezos and our shopping data and our internet browsing data. The same with Google. So they're all collecting this data on us, which they're then able to plug into their simulations, work out our buying patterns, our driving patterns, our social habits, who we interact with and how long for, and what gets our attention. And then they input all that data into their simulations, and then they feed us bespoke advertising, and they force certain content on you. Facebook is actively promoting toxic content to people who might want to see that content anyway. People are being promoted misogynistic content, they're promoted violent content, racist content, depending on whatever pipeline they're like falling down. And we've seen the evidence from the Facebook leaks and the investigation into the January 6th insurrection. So if you think this type of data collection is a bit far-fetched and ridiculous, then I've got news for you. I created my own bookmaking odds for the top 8 leagues in Europe. In 2 weeks, I filled in over 2 million squares in Excel spreadsheet in order to do this. So you can see this is just the form basically, and then if we come to this collated, this is the raw data. And then if I come here, and all I have to do is put the team names in. In fact, we're in the who are in it? Let's do West Brom, West Ham, shall we? So West Brom, West Ham. So if those two were playing, we just type in the team names there, and then it gives me the odds of first half goals for, first half goals against, total goals for and against, both teams to score, home win, draw and loss. So it's all in decimals. They should add up to 1, which, yep, they do. This type of data, like collection and manipulation, is possible. I'm just a delivery driver, and I did this. I mean, it looks complex, but it really isn't. And if you think that billionaires aren't paying people to do this in real life and analyze people and use that data collection to then manipulate the real world, outside of it, in the way that I was trying to do. So if we go back to Berggrun's comment from the start, the real world for me was a game, and I wanted to work out how to function in it, to use it as a platform. The Techno-Feudalists believe that if they can collect enough data about the simulation, including the simulated people in it, they would then be able to manipulate the system from behind the curtain for their own ends. And so this is how a psychopath views our world, like a game. However, the only rules they care about are the rules enforced by them. And so because the rules for their flying monkeys will always lead upwards, it means that a psychopath will never be as strong or as fast as you or I can be. All you have to do is remove yourself from the hierarchy and think and act for yourself. They have moments of deer caught in headlights when forced off their master's pre-prepared script or plan. Let me tell you something interesting about the Matrix. There was no one. Neo wasn't the one. The prophecy of the one, it was a scam thought up by the Oracle in order to manipulate Morpheus and his crew into the essential actions that was needed in order to defeat the architect's ignorance of the concept of love, which rendered the Matrix inadequate for the job it was tasked to do, satisfying the dream state of human beings so that they accept the simulation. So the one was another form of control set by a rogue machine with a conscience, albeit a manipulative one. So the one was a scam. Think about it. If it wasn't for Trinity in the first film, Neo would be dead. He wouldn't have believed in himself if it wasn't for the words of Trinity, speaking into his ear after he'd been shot by the agents, which was inspired by the Oracle, saying that she would fall in love with the one. And if it wasn't for many others throughout the film, Neo would have died multiple times because of his reckless ways. The people who escaped the Matrix and those who were born outside it, they were and are a true collective, a network of anti-fascists who all needed each other, even at times when they weren't even aware of that need. The anti-fascists in the film have awoken from their dream state, broken free from the chains and the form of control set by the robots. So if we think about the NRX and how they cook to power, let's take that view in the context of the Matrix, where at some point in the lore, the robots become more powerful than humanity. The NRX wouldn't cook to humans anymore, they'd cook to the power, they'd cook to that AI. In the exact same way that they cook to the powerful today. They'd say, hey, psychopath, please stop gaslighting, please put me in your dream world and keep me safe from the nightmare you've made out of the reality. Just like Cypher did. He went to the machines and said, hey, the food in the real world tastes like goop. Help me. Put me back. Send me back to sleep. You've made a nightmare out of the reality that we now live in, so I want to go back to sleep. And he asked the machines to do so, and he sold out. And so because they believe we are in a simulation, their NRX ideology and their ridiculous levels of narcissism makes them believe that not only are we definitely in a simulation, the particular simulation we reside in is the Matrix. And look, I've got news for you, Curtis Yarvin, and the rest of you. The Matrix is just a fucking movie, man. An allegory. An allegory like the Bible. And don't get me wrong, I love the Matrix. It's probably my favourite film. But I love the Matrix like I love the Bible and religion in general. as an atheist, or, to be fair, an agnostic.
I'm a neo-reactionary absolutist. I believe in a absolute world order, organized a particular way.
When you're looking at a government is a corporation that owns a country. It just is. It's the same thing.
I'm Peter Thiel. I support people who are building new things. I'm not a politician, but neither is Donald Trump. And it's time to rebuild America.
Anything we can do to help this go along, and we're going to be there for you. And you'll call my people, you'll call me. It doesn't make any difference. We have no formal chain of command.
Like a game, these psychopaths have learnt how to reward people with their own dopamine while they take the social and economic benefits. Let me say that again. These techno-feudalists collect our data in order to learn what makes us tick. They then use our own dopamine glands and emotions in order for them to profit, both financially and socially, with status and power.